Cyberpunk 2077 was a game that, upon release, was a mild disappointment, to put it extremely lightly. CD Projekt Red was critically acclaimed and lauded as one of the development companies still left that made great games. Unfortunately, this game was their biggest gaff ever, and they are probably still paying the price for it. While they are busy recovering from that blunder as the game is being patched, something else of significant value has come from this game's release. I'm talking, of course, about Cyberpunk Edgerunners, the anime set within the same world as the video game. Now, I've never been a huge fan of the cyberpunk subgenre of science fiction, but this anime has catapulted it into a subgenre I'm now genuinely enjoying. But what really drew me into the story and world is the amazing themes the series tries to wrestle with. And while I couldn't really go over all of them in a single video, I do want to highlight some of my particular favorite themes that this series explores to some degree. Now, I'm not saying that Cyberpunk Edgerunners is the best anime out there, or even the best cyberpunk anime out there. My knowledge on the genre is very limited, and I've seen quite a few creators give some mixed opinions on the show. I personally think it's a solid show, and would give it a soft 8 out of 10, but I can see that it wouldn't be everyone's cup of tea. The purpose is not to actually review the show, but rather to discuss some of its themes and the ideas it stirred in my head. So if you personally don't like the show, that's totally fine. That said, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, be aware that I will be going into full spoilers in order to discuss some of these themes here. If you've seen it already, then great. If not, but it doesn't bother you, awesome. Now, before we get into the themes, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Let's establish what this show is about and what the context is around the things I'll be discussing. On a basic level, Cyberpunk Edgerunners is the story of a young boy thrust into an underground ring of professionals who do extremely dangerous jobs for money. Either as mercenaries, data hackers, hostage retrievers, bounty hunters, or simply as security detail. But of course, we can go into a bit more detail than that. Our protagonist is David Martinez, a prodigy whiz kid at a very prestigious academy thanks to his exceptional grades. The problem, however, is that his mom really can't afford to send him there. His best bet in life is to climb the corporate ladder out of near poverty, but he definitely doesn't fit in, and his classmates make that abundantly clear to him. It's a story we've all seen at least once or twice before. Then things take a turn for the worst when his mother dies after a car crash that was caused by them getting caught in the crossfire of what appears to be a heist. This leaves David stranded with no hope, no future, and no mother there to care for him. He's on his own now, and he has to find a way to deal with this ruthless world or he'll be swallowed up by it. David finds a piece of cybernetic gear that his mother had, unbeknownst to him, been smuggling for a gang of underground professionals like I explained a moment ago. Finding it difficult to sell, he has it installed into his own body and gains the ability to move at incredible speeds. This is all fine and well until he stumbles upon a person who would change his life forever. Her name is Lucy, and she essentially has the ability to hack into any system. On top of that, she's also part of the gang that initially bought that cybernetic gear from David's mother. The gear that he installed. This is basically where our story really kicks off. It's a tale of brotherhood, action, love, undermining the powers that be, and crazy technology. Cyberpunk Edgerunners tells a very compact story about this kind of dystopic future world that draws you in, chews you up, and spits you out. In a good way. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine, but I definitely enjoyed it. Regardless of whether you liked it or not, I do think that the show brings up some very important themes for us to consider. So I'd like to look at some of those right now to expand my thoughts on the matter. Let me know what you thought about these themes in the comments. I'd love to get an engaging conversation going. Transhumanism is an interesting subject that probably deserves its own dedicated video. Trying to encompass it all here isn't really going to be possible, so I'll try and focus on one specific idea. I think transhumanism is a Pandora's box that humanity isn't ready to open. You see, once we open that box, there's no going back. Once we get to the point where synthetic changes or upgrades to the human body is better than what biology can do, then there really is no going back. It's a singularity that can't be undone. I'm not saying that it'll be bad, but I'm saying it's a place we can't go back from without destroying civilization. Without some kind of civilization-ending event, this Pandora's box will remain open forever. And whether it's something good or bad depends on your own views. As an example of another Pandora's box we can all understand, abortion is something we can't go back from. We've never been able to undo a pregnancy with this level of precision regardless of the stage of development before. Now, whether you're for or against it depends on your own views, but it's here now. The knowledge on the procedure exists and people will make use of it somewhere. The debate will never end, but you're not undoing it no matter how hard you try. It's here now, so we need to deal with it some way. The same goes for transhumanism. Once it's here, there will be people who want to use it to their advantage. There'll be no going back. And this brings up huge ethical questions. Is it okay to implant synthetic biomachinery into the human body? Are we okay with the fact that the richest among us will essentially have the best lifespan and quality of life? Do we accept that certain parts of life and society will be barred to anyone who doesn't have the requisite upgrades? It may sound far-fetched, but it's a real possibility. And that's just assuming that it's all hard technology fitted to our biological bodies. What about gene editing? This is something that's a lot more likely to be a major topic in our lifetime. Is it okay to alter the genes of a baby to suit your preferences? You may think it's fine to do that since it's your child, but there are larger implications of it. If, for example, scientists find a gene or sequence of genes that definitively determine that the child will be gay, do we allow parents the ability to get rid of it? Or, conversely, do we allow parents the ability to make their children gay? What about governments that may want to make their citizens extra obedient? Or maybe make their soldiers superhuman? The genetic altering alone opens a major can of worms on an ethical level. Throw in technology that can outperform even the most genetically altered biology, and you begin to see just how insane things can get. Is humanity ready for this? But then, you also need to ask yourself if we should ignore the question altogether. What if we can cure cancer using this kind of technology? Or what if a Neuralink type implant could give disabled people the ability to walk? What if, by throwing away this type of advancement, we also condemn countless people to untold levels of suffering? It's not an easy question, and it's a can of worms that I personally don't think humans are ready for yet. The problem is that this technology is coming. At some point we'll get there and the Pandora's box will open. And once it's open, there's no going back. Cyberpunk really drives home the idea that the world around you doesn't care about you. David's mother, for example, is left waiting for medical assistance because she doesn't have the right health plan. And this is ultimately what results in her death. It's an exaggerated form of our current world, where your worth is defined by your consumption. If you spend more and more, you're worth more. Slave away at your job so that you can afford to buy more and consume more. You're nothing more than a number. Nothing more than a consumer. I see this as a symptom of a society where family values and close personal bonds have been replaced by likes and retweets, where close connections and relationships have been replaced by followers and subscribers. Actual communities have been replaced by online communities. We're atomized individuals and thus we're easier to market to, easier to sell to, easier to control. I've railed against consumerism before and I'll stand against it for as long as it's a problem we'll all have to face. Consumerism causes a loss of humanity within people. Not only do we care less about the things that make us human, other people and our relationships with them, it also makes us less human and more uncaring. We don't care about each other anymore because we're atomized little consumers who have to suck on the teat of corporations that control and own our minds. We don't have the emotional room to care about each other anymore because we're too busy caring about our precious products and social media clout. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against capitalism. I'm a staunch free market proponent. What I'm against is the mindless consumerist culture that formed as a result of broken incentives and parasitic corporations. It's why I consider myself a minimalist. You have to actively reject a consumerist mindset or it will inevitably consume you. Cyberpunk shows us the reality of rampant consumerism in an almost literal fashion. Just as consumerism pushes you to become cold as steel and uncaring, so too does the cybernetic implants make your body literally become cold steel. You become a commodity, and you become as valuable as the metal shell your brain inhabits. I'm a sucker for a good tragedy. Not that I have some unhealthy obsession with the worst parts of life, quite the contrary actually. I just appreciate when a story can pull on your heartstrings through the medium of shared trauma. You see, the way I see it, the story of humanity is a tragedy. The story of humanity, in my estimation, is one giant tragedy writ large. Think about it. We're the small, intrepid species who learned to hack evolution not by adapting to our environment, but by making our environment adapt to us. We underwent hardships, great accomplishments, and sung a song of joy and mirth, rage and sorrow as we spread around the globe. And one day, as with all good things, our time will come to an end. Whether it's at the hands of some natural disaster, an invading species, or even our own doing, we will at some point die out. I know we like to think about the idea of living into eternity, but that's statistically the most unlikely scenario. At some point, our story comes to an end. And this is true for both individuals and for our species. Our existence is a bittersweet tragedy, but that doesn't mean it has to be tragic. Though our story will come to an end, it doesn't mean it has to be filled with sorrow. Tragedy, surprisingly, can bring out the best in us. Through tragedy, we're able to value what's truly good in life. You can't value friendship if you've never been alone. You can't value love if you've never felt apathy. You can't value beauty if you've never experienced disgust. And you can never value life if you've never felt the loss that comes with death. Tragedies allow us to experience these things without having to actually go through them. Watching the tragedy of Cyberpunk Edgerunners unfold was an absolute joy for me. It wasn't the best tragedy ever told, of course, but it definitely was a tragedy told well. And any well-told tragedy will bring a lot of value to whoever is willing to stare into the depths of the abyss. There is a lot of stigma against staring into the void. Some people say you should only ever think positive thoughts, and you should only think of good things that make you smile. I disagree with this. There is tremendous value in facing the darkness we find in life. Other than giving us the ability to appreciate what's good in life, facing darkness also allows us to prepare for it when it inevitably comes. I've only been able to overcome my anxieties by becoming intimately familiar with the things that make me anxious. I've only ever been able to overcome my fears by getting up close and personal with what scares me. And I've only ever been able to accept the inevitability of death by staring it in the eyes and accepting it as the only true conclusion to life. Looking down into the void can be scary and difficult, but it is only by doing so that we manage to prepare for it when it eventually swallows us. There is immense value in tragedy, and by being a well-written tragedy, Cyberpunk has brought value to those of us who got lost in its story. Thank you very much for watching. I sincerely appreciate all of your time and attention. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, since that's one of the biggest metrics that YouTube looks at when recommending it. And if you'd like to see more, please hit that subscribe button so that you can be notified of future videos. Take care, and we'll talk again very soon.